If you close your eyes and picture hell, what do you see? Flames, winged demons with pitchforks, a place of eternal, agonizing punishment. For centuries, this image has been branded onto the collective human psyche. But what if the reality, as described by our ancestors, is far more complex, far more structured, and infinitely more terrifying than you can imagine? What if fire is only the beginning? Today, we embark on a journey. We will peel back the veil of modern caricature and venture into the abyss as it was envisioned by prophets, poets, and philosophers. This is a voyage through the most horrifying descriptions of hell ever recorded, from ancient scriptures to medieval poetry, to uncover what humanity truly believes awaits in the darkness below. Before hell was a furnace, it was a silence, a vast, echoing emptiness. For the ancient Hebrews, the final destination for all souls, righteous and wicked alike, was a place called Sheol. The Old Testament paints a bleak picture of it, not as a realm of punishment, but of profound nothingness. In the book of Job, it is described as a land of gloom and deep shadow, a place of deepest night, of utter chaos, where even the light is like darkness. Imagine it, an eternal twilight where memory fades, passions cease, and existence is reduced to a whisper. The dead are called shades, weak, witless phantoms with no connection to the world of the living. Here, the ultimate punishment wasn't pain, but the complete and utter loss of self. You were not tortured, you simply ceased to matter. This concept of a gloomy, neutral underworld was not unique to the Hebrews. Across the Aegean Sea, the ancient Greeks spoke of Hades. Much like Sheol, it was the default destination for most of the dead. Souls would cross the river Styx, guided by the ferryman Charon, and enter a gray, joyless kingdom ruled by the god of the same name. They would wander the asphodel meadows for eternity, listless and bored. But the Greeks conceived of something deeper, a place reserved for a special kind of sinner, the Titans, the god's enemies, and mortals who committed unforgivable atrocities. This was Tartarus, a pit as far below Hades as the earth is from the heavens. Homer describes it as a dark, bottomless chasm, shrouded in iron gates and bronze thresholds. It was here that Tantalus was cursed with eternal thirst and hunger, and Sisyphus was doomed to forever roll his boulder. Tartarus wasn't just oblivion. It was personalized, ironic torment, a precursor to the hell we know today. So, how did the silent gloom of Sheol catch fire? The transformation began with a single, horrifying place on earth, the Valley of Hinnom, just outside Jerusalem. In Hebrew, this valley was called Gehinnom, a name that would later be Hellenized into Gehenna. This was not a mythical location. It was a real place with a dark history. In the Old Testament, it was the site of pagan rituals, where apostate kings of Judah sacrificed their own children in fire to the god Molech. The screams, the smoke, the smell of burning flesh. This valley became a symbol of ultimate evil and divine judgment. The prophet Jeremiah cursed the place, declaring that it would become a valley of slaughter, a mass grave. By the time of Jesus, Gehenna was believed to be a perpetually burning garbage dump, a place where the refuse of Jerusalem and the corpses of criminals were consumed by an endless fire. It became the perfect, terrifying metaphor for the fate of the wicked. When Jesus speaks of hell in the New Testament, he often uses the word Gehenna. In the Gospel of Mark, he describes it as a place where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. This imagery is visceral. The undying worm suggests unending decay and gnawing regret, while the unquenchable fire signifies an active, eternal punishment. The New Testament adds other horrifying dimensions. The outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, suggesting isolation and despair. And in the book of Revelation, we are introduced to the ultimate vision of damnation, the lake of fire and brimstone, where the devil, the beast, and all whose names are not in the book of life are thrown for eternity. The quiet shadow of Sheol had been replaced by a roaring inferno. Hell was no longer a passive state of non-existence. It was an active, fiery, and eternal place of God's wrath. For centuries, these biblical images fueled nightmares, but hell remained a largely undefined realm of fire and suffering. It took the vision of a 14th century Italian poet, Dante Alighieri, to give the abyss a map. His epic poem, Inferno, is arguably the single most influential description of hell in Western culture. It is not just a place of punishment, but a highly structured bureaucracy of damnation. Dante's hell is a massive, cone-shaped pit, plunging deep into the earth. An inscription above its gate reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." It is divided into 9 concentric circles, each punishing a specific category of sin, with the punishments becoming more severe as one descends. The journey begins in the first circle, limbo. Here reside the virtuous pagans, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, heroes like Hector of Troy. Their punishment is not physical pain, but a deep, eternal sadness, a perpetual longing for the God they can never know. It is a hell of sighs. In the second circle, the lustful are caught in an eternal whirlwind, swept about ceaselessly by violent storms, symbolizing their inability to control their passions in life. Here, Dante meets the famous lovers Paolo and Francesca, forever bound together in their tempestuous punishment. We descend past the gluttonous in the third circle, who lie in a vile, icy slush, tormented by the monstrous three-headed dog, Cerberus. In the sixth circle, the heretics are trapped in flaming tombs, their stone lids to be sealed forever on Judgment Day. But the true horror lies in the lower circles, reserved not for sins of passion, but for sins of malice. The seventh circle punishes the violent. Those violent against their neighbors are submerged in a river of boiling blood. Those violent against themselves, the suicides, are transformed into gnarled, thorny trees, their leaves eaten by harpies, only able to speak when their branches are broken and bleeding. Finally, at the very bottom of the pit, in the frozen ninth circle, we find the traitors. This is the ultimate sin for Dante, a sin of cold-blooded betrayal. And it is punished not by fire, but by ice. Souls are frozen solid in a vast lake called Cocytus. At its center is Satan himself, a grotesque three-faced beast, his wings beating to create the freezing wind that chills all of hell. He is not a king ruling a fiery kingdom. He is a prisoner, trapped in the ice up to his waist, weeping bloody tears as he chews on the 3 greatest traitors in history: Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius. Dante's vision is one of contrapasso, poetic justice. The punishment is a twisted reflection of the sin. It is this intricate psychological torment that makes his Inferno so enduringly terrifying.
For many, these are just stories, ancient allegories, and medieval fantasies. But what if they are more? In the modern era, a new chilling genre of testimony has emerged, the near-death experience, or NDE. While many report visions of light and peace, a significant number return with horrifying accounts of a place that sounds eerily like hell. These are not theologians or poets. They are ordinary people, doctors, students, construction workers who have been clinically dead and brought back. Their stories, though personal, share unsettlingly common themes. One man, a college professor who suffered a cardiac arrest, described being pulled into a void of absolute, suffocating darkness. He felt an overwhelming presence of fear and despair, not his own, but emanating from countless other beings around him. He heard a cacophony of screams, but not of pain, of regret, of eternal loss. Another account, from a woman who nearly drowned, speaks of a landscape of barren, gray rock under a blood-red sky. She saw beings human in shape, but twisted by hatred and misery, tormenting one another endlessly. There was no fire, she reported, but a spiritual burning, an intense awareness of every selfish act, every hurt she had caused, playing out in a loop for all to see. Many NDE accounts of hell describe a profound sense of isolation. Even when surrounded by other souls, there is no connection, only a deep, unbridgeable loneliness. They speak of a place devoid of love, of hope, of any presence of God. The primary torture, they often say, is not physical but psychological, an inescapable, eternal confrontation with one's own failures and sins, stripped of all excuses. While science seeks to explain these experiences as neurological phenomena, their consistency is haunting. They echo the ancient fears, the darkness of Sheol, the gnashing of teeth from Gehenna, the profound sorrow of Dante's limbo. They force us to wonder, are these just the firings of a dying brain? Or are they fleeting glimpses into a reality we are not meant to see? The fear of a punishing afterlife is not an exclusively Western obsession. Cultures across the globe have conceived of their own versions of hell, each reflecting their unique values and fears. In Islam, the concept of Jahannam is a terrifyingly vivid depiction of damnation. It is described as having 7 gates, each for a different class of sinner. Its fire is said to be 70 times hotter than earthly fire. The Quran describes the inhabitants of Jahannam wearing garments of fire, drinking boiling water that scalds their insides. They eat from the tree of Zakum, a tree that springs out of the bottom of hell, its fruit like the heads of devils, which only intensifies their suffering. Jahannam is a place of absolute sensory torment, designed to purify the sinful soul through immense pain. In Eastern religions like Buddhism, the concept is different. Naraka is not an eternal destination, but a temporary, albeit horrifying one. It's more akin to a purgatory. There are numerous narakas, both hot and cold, where beings are sent to burn off their negative karma. One might be crushed by mountains, sawn in half, or frozen in a glacial wasteland. But once their karmic debt is paid, they can be reborn into a higher realm. The horror of Naraka is not its eternity, but the sheer intensity of its suffering and the long, long ages one might have to endure it. From the frozen wastes of the Norse Helheim to the complex underworlds of ancient Egypt, humanity has consistently imagined a place where justice is served, where evil is punished. These hells, though different in their details, share a common purpose: to serve as an ultimate warning, a cosmic consequence for a life lived against the moral order. We have journeyed from the silent gloom of Sheol to the icy heart of Dante's Inferno, from the fires of Gehenna to the testimonies of those who claim to have returned from the abyss. We've seen that every description of hell is a mirror, reflecting the deepest fears and highest ideals of the civilization that created it. It tells us what they valued, what they abhorred, and how they conceived of ultimate justice. But perhaps the most terrifying thought is not that hell is a place we go to after we die, but a state we can create right here on earth. The real hell is the one we build for ourselves and for others, brick by painful brick. It's the private torment of addiction, the isolating darkness of severe depression, the consuming fire of unchecked hatred, the frozen wasteland of a heart that cannot forgive. It is the battlefield where a soldier loses their humanity, or the quiet desperation of a life lived in regret. These are not metaphors, they are real, tangible hells. The ancient visions, the poetic maps, the prophetic warnings. They all serve to remind us of the profound consequences of our choices. They show us the abyss we are capable of creating. After this journey, the question is not whether hell is real, but whether we are living in it already. Our collective, enduring vision of hell is a constant, desperate plea from our ancestors and from ourselves to choose a different path. It says that we believe in consequence. We believe that actions have meaning. And we believe with a deep and trembling hope that we have the power to build a heaven, not just for the next life, but for this one.